This is Matt Coyne, host of The Cheap Seats. Thank you for listening to the following broadcast here on Public House Media.
I'm the Greg.
And I am Dave Show.
We host the Greg and Dave Show on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out our show, The Greg and Dave Show, where we talk about strange, bizarre, and sometimes just downright quirky news stories that you may not have heard about.
A new show comes out every Wednesday. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And hey, thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
The latest headlines.
The Houston Astros, the defending World Series champions, got better adding Garrett Cole.
The insightful interviews.
Rick Saratella, NFL Draft Bible. With how much emphasis is put on the position, yet how many over the last couple of years we've had questions. Why do we put such an emphasis on drafting a quarterback number one overall?
The bottom line is there's not enough good quarterbacks to go around. And I think with the new CBA, it's really a low-risk gamble now. If you look at the playoff teams, the common denominator, good quarterback play.
The hottest takes.
I think the guy to blame is the one guy who hasn't left yet. I think Russell Westbrook is one of the bigger problems in Oklahoma City.
Can all be found on Press Row. Broadcasting is part of the Public House Media Network. Here's your host.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
Christian Heimall.
Just when we thought we were out, they pull us back in. You know, I was all set. I was ready to get over and be done with NBA free agency, move on with my summer, and then DeMarcus Cousins goes and does what he did on Sunday. It got really interesting really, really quick, and now it's kind of died down. But you know, it's one of those things. It sparked an interesting debate this week, and we're going to touch on it here. And you are on Press Row as broadcasting as part of the Public House Media. I'm Christian Heimall. So happy to have you guys here with us on this. July 5th, 2018. Hope you enjoyed your Independence Day responsibly, safely, most importantly. But it sparked an interesting debate, and that is, are the Warriors good for the NBA? And there's a lot of talk about how this is bad. This is, you know, we just went through 4 years where it was the same two teams competing, and, you know, now that LeBron left, we still know it's going to be the Warriors out of the West, but at least maybe it's interesting. We don't know what's going to happen in the East with the Celtics and the Sixers. Could the Wizards make something happen? Is Toronto poised? Next year, are the Knicks ready to go? There's been a lot of discussion on and then DeMarcus Cousins goes and signs in Golden State, and the question becomes, are the Warriors good for the NBA? This is bad for basketball, is what a lot of folks are saying, to join these super teams. But this has been an argument of mine really for years now, and it stems at the very bottom. It stems from the MJ LeBron debate. That LeBron, you know, MJ never had to play on a super team. I'm sorry. What is Scottie Pippen? What is Dennis Rodman? Steve Kerr? Phil Jackson? The greatest coach of all time. You know, Scottie Pippen, one of the best defensive players of all time. Dennis Rodman, the best rebounder of the 90s. And you know, so there are super teams. This has always been part of sports. I don't know if the Warriors are bad for basketball. I don't know. Because you got to remember, this is something that was collectively bargained in. This is something that the players agreed to. The owners agreed to. So you got to give a lot of credit to these teams that work within the luxury tax, within the soft salary cap that the NBA has. I can't fault the Warriors for signing DeMarcus Cousins. Sure, I can fault players like Kevin Durant and DeMarcus Cousins for going to teams that they know are championship quality. Like, for instance, you know, no offense to Dylan Brooks. I love the kid. I liked him when he was at Oregon, but, dude, Dylan Brooks is never going to be a Hall of Famer. He could win 7 championships with the Warriors. He will never be a Hall of Famer just because he hasn't really contributed. So it's one thing to be, you know, the backup to the backup who wins a championship. It's another thing to be one of these guys contributing. And the Warriors legitimately could roll out a starting 5 that has 5 Hall of Famers in Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, DeMarcus Cousins, and then for whatever reason I'm blanking here, but I mean and Kevin Durant. So they could legitimately do that, but that doesn't necessarily mean this is bad for basketball. The Showtime Lakers. You look at Magic Johnson. You look at James Worthy, Kareem towards the end of his career. These are all things that it has happened before. You look at the Boston Celtics of that era. You look at some of those teams that these guys were on. I mean, seriously, look at the Lakers in 1988, 87-88 Lakers. As you sit here as a champion when they won, you look at the Lakers in that year, and you look at some of the guys that were on that team, and it's embarrassing almost. It's insane to think that the Lakers had the type of talent that they did. It's absolutely insane to think that, when you look at what they were able to do and what they were able to have put together in those particular years. I mean, it's one of the things that you just have to understand. These are things that have happened before. 1987, 1988 Los Angeles Lakers. When you look at what they had, this roster winning the NBA Finals, beating the Pistons, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Kurt Rambis, James Worthy. You mean to tell me it's not a super team right there? That team right there is not a super team. A dynasty. That wasn't bad for basketball. It was great for basketball. The Detroit Pistons, who they beat in the NBA Finals, had Darryl Dawkins, Joe Dumars, Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, Dennis Rodman, Isaiah Thomas. These are, I understand that we all want we want talent to be distributed elsewhere. We want those great teams to be all over the place and to have a different spot. But this is nothing new. The reason why we're upset about it is because now we have keyboard warriors who can sit at home and type up whatever they want on Twitter and get upset about it, because we have the ability for anybody to give a hot take. This is how sports have always been, these dynasties. And to those of you who say you wouldn't watch, you're a liar. Because how many of you watch the Super Bowl more so to see Tom Brady lose than to see the Eagles win? That's where sports will always succeed. It doesn't matter. This is great for basketball. You want to know why? Because people are going to watch to see who's going to beat the Warriors. They're not going to watch to see the Warriors win. They're going to watch to see who could beat them. It's what makes David Goliath so great. It's what made gladiators so great in ancient Rome, is the fact that it's not who's going to win. It's can the dynasty lose? The Bulls. Most people, not everybody's a Jordan fanatic. Not everybody loves the Bulls of the 90s. A lot of people hate the Bulls, and most of them hate them because they wanted to see them lose. Why does everybody hate the Yankees? Because they want to see who the Yankees are going to lose to. That's why they watch the Yankees. That's why it's great when the Red Sox and the Yankees are successful. So, to those of you who are upset about this, you're only upset about it because we live in a hot take social media era that we do. This is how basketball has always been. The Showtime Lakers, the Bad Boy Pistons, Bill Russell's Celtics, Jordan's Bulls, the Spurs, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, Bruce Bowen. The list goes on and on and on, folks. Miami Heat. Even before, the Knicks of the 90s, the Hall of Famers. I understand we want it talented, distributed. You just got to look and find it elsewhere. Milwaukee is so talented. Utah is so talented. Houston, Philadelphia, the Wizards getting Dwight Howard. Who knows if that makes them more talented, but it makes it fun to watch. The Celtics, the Raptors. There is talent elsewhere. You've got to look for it. And realistically, it's up to the NBA, Commissioner Adam Silver, and its broadcast partners, ESPN and TNT, and Turner, to showcase where that other talent is. That's up to them. It is now. So, to those of you who say this is bad for basketball, you're wrong. This is great for basketball. This is awesome for basketball. Michael Singer, NBA writer, USA Today, is going to join us after the break, talk to us a little bit more about what DeMarcus Cousins means for the Warriors. Does he believe this is bad for basketball? How did this all happen? And what else could possibly happen in the NBA free agency? We've also got your listener questions coming up just a little bit. You're on Press Row, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Want to be part of the show? Go to Facebook and search Press Row Podcast Public House Media, or find us on Twitter and Instagram at Press Row PHM. You can also email the program, pressrowphm@gmail.com.
Hi, this is Baxter Colburn, host of the Verse of the Day podcast here on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Verse of the Day, where we take a look at real-world experiences and applications to one Bible verse every Monday through Friday as we get an idea of what it looks like to be a little bit better of a Christian and how we can make this world a better place, one verse at a time. I hope you'll join me every single Monday through Friday right here on Public House Media. And I hope you'll subscribe by going to Apple Podcasts or wherever you find good podcasts as well. Once again, thanks for tuning in to the following broadcast here on Public House Media.
This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
Welcome back on Press Row, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network here on this July 5th, 2018. It seems as though California is the place to be if you want to play in the NBA. LeBron James heading to the Lakers, and then DeMarcus Cousins out of nowhere, I guess, signing for the Lakers. We welcome in Michael Singer, NBA writer for USA Today. Michael, where did this deal come from? Because it seemed as though for DeMarcus Cousins, Pelicans or Lakers, and then out of nowhere, it's the Golden State Warriors.
Well, let's keep in mind that DeMarcus Cousins has never even been to the postseason after 7+ years in Sacramento, 1.5 years in New Orleans. He got hurt before the New Orleans Pelicans went on to sweep the Portland Trailblazers in the first round. So he has never been to the postseason. That was undoubtedly part of the allure of going to Golden State. There's also the fact that Golden State can afford him time to recover. He's supposed to come back in December or January. And there's not really any concern or any rush to get him there because the Warriors are so loaded already with all-stars at every position. And then from the Warriors' perspective, there is not a ton of risk here. If everyone acknowledges that he's somewhat of a volatile personality, but you consider the fact that he's a 4-time All-Star. He gives the Warriors a new look. They haven't really had a post presence like him since Andrew Bogut was there. And it's a risk worth taking if he doesn't work or if he clashes with any of their stars, let's say Draymond or KD or whoever it is, they can cut him. It's a $5.3 million deal is significant for the Warriors because it actually turns out to be a little bit more than $20 million as a result of tax implications. But the $5.3 million is not a huge risk in terms of the potential talent that you get when he does return from that Achilles tear.
So they get Kevin Durant. He restructures his contract, gives them the opportunity to sign DeMarcus Cousins. Is this a good thing for the NBA? Is a team like the Warriors, are they good for basketball?
It's a really difficult question. I'm inclined to say no, it's not, because listen, before the DeMarcus Cousins signing, there wasn't a ton of question of who would be in the finals and ultimately who would likely win the finals. You add a guy like him, which is another insurance policy for the Warriors and gives them even more dynamic looks from a basketball sense, and that minimizes the drama. And that's obviously what NBA fans gravitate towards and watch throughout the season for. That being said, if you were to inject any personality into the Warriors locker room who could conceivably make it more interesting, it would be DeMarcus Cousins. Does the end outcome already feel like it's decided? Yes. Does that mean that the journey, the season, all the storylines, all the theatrics that will go on are not interesting? Of course it doesn't. It's still going to be fun to watch. Let's not forget that the players are partially responsible for this. Mm-hmm. They did not want to accept the smoothing of the salary cap spike that the NBA side did want to. The NBA warned the players union. They said the potential ramifications of jumping from $70 million cap spike to $94 million in summer of 2016-17, that was going to impact the competitive balance of the league and lead to some unpredictability. That's exactly what happened. So I don't really want to hear players belly aching about it when they had a role in leading to this competitive balance. That being, let's also not discount that the NBA has seen dynasties before. This isn't the first dynasty. This isn't the last dynasty. This happens. There will be challengers. We'll have an interesting decision when the Warriors may need to decide on Klay Thompson or Draymond Green in terms of who they want to extend. Klay Thompson becomes a free agent next year, Draymond can become a free agent in 2 years. So, they're going to have some decisions to make. Who knows how much money they're willing to spend in terms of the tax implications and the repeater tax. So it's going to get extremely pricey if the Warriors do keep this intact. For the average fan, you can say that this is not a good development. You want parity in the league, and the DeMarcus Cousins signing just sort of minimizes that interest.
Speaking with Michael Singer, USA Today NBA writer here on Press Row. Prior to DeMarcus Cousins, it was kind of what we, for the most part, expected. LeBron James heading to the Lakers, but a couple of other guys going there as well. Lance Stevenson reportedly heading with a couple of others. JaVale McGee, one of them. Rajon Rondo potential. What about this Lakers migration has maybe kind of revamped Showtime out there in LA?
You look at LeBron James's comments during the NBA playoffs and during the finals. He says he's still in championship mode. He said he wants players with a high IQ and a high basketball IQ. So naturally, the first guys that they go and get are JaVale McGee and Lance Stevenson. It is going to be fascinating to watch. I think that the Rajon Rondo signing is particularly interesting because that leads to the question of what does that mean for Lonzo Ball and his future? It wasn't that long ago that Magic Johnson was saying that Lonzo would be the face of the franchise. Does that make Lonzo Ball expendable? Does that mean that Rajon Rondo will come off the bench? Will Rajon Rondo groom Lonzo Ball? How will LeBron influence this rest of the locker room that the majority is 25 years and younger? The Lakers haven't made the playoffs in 5 seasons, which is an anomaly for them. They are accustomed to being relevant. I think it's going to take time for LeBron and the Lakers to get there. I don't think that they are title contenders this season. Let's see what other moves that they make. But when you're looking at the landscape of the West, certainly now with DeMarcus Cousins going to the Warriors, I think that the Lakers at best are looking at a 3, 4, 5 seed, somewhere in that range. I think that they're still below the Rockets. And then, I guess they can get into the debate of OKC or potentially Portland or maybe Utah. But the Lakers have some growing pains that they're going to need to work out. And LeBron's going to have to do some babysitting before they get anywhere in the postseason.
What does this do for the Eastern Conference? Obviously, with LeBron switching, it basically eliminates Cleveland. But Celtics healthy, if the Sixers are healthy, is it just a 2-horse race now in the East, or is there any rumblings of possible moves that could make an Eastern team a little bit more relevant?
I think that Boston is the clear-cut favorite. I would be stunned if they didn't make it to the finals. Kyrie coming back, Gordon Hayward coming back, and given that they made it to a Game 7 without their 2 best players in the Eastern Conference Finals is incredible. I think Philadelphia has a real chance too. Don't sleep on the idea that they're not trying to acquire Kawhi Leonard. They are still working the phones. They have some assets. It's obviously a huge risk if you were to get Kawhi Leonard, given that he's going to be a free agent next year. But they're trying. Philadelphia is doing what it can to compete with Boston. Philadelphia is, I would say, a year or 2 behind in terms of the trajectory. But Boston has a fantastic foundation, as does Philly. The other team you have to keep an eye on is the Toronto Raptors. If you're Dwayne Casey, the recently fired coach of the Toronto Raptors, who won all kinds of postseason awards for what he did this year, you just have to be scratching your head because LeBron, swept you, ousted you in the playoffs 2 consecutive years. Whether you want to make it this stark or not, LeBron is a serious reason why Dwayne Casey is no longer coaching the Toronto Raptors. And, if you were to give Dwayne Casey some truth serum, I bet you he would say, I really wish I had a chance to run it back with my guys. As it stands, the Toronto Raptors cannot make a move of huge significance with Kyle Lowry or DeMar DeRozan, because their biggest obstacle in the East is finally gone. You can't sell your fans that you're doing everything you can without competing in the year that LeBron finally gets out of your way. So those 3 teams, I would also keep an eye on Indiana. Who knows what moves they make in terms of signings, but Victor Oladipo has proven that he is a legitimate franchise centerpiece Orlando, OKC didn't recognize it. But, the Pacers are coming. And then I think everyone's sort of looking at the Bucks. When are they going to make their ascent? When is Giannis finally going to make a serious run in the postseason? That hasn't happened yet. And given how talented he is, that needs to happen for him to be considered among the top 3-4 players in the NBA. Talent-wise, he's there, but postseason resume is not. So I think the East is completely up for grabs. LeBron has went to the finals for the last 8 seasons coming out of the East. I think that there's a huge void and a huge vacuum that will be filled. I do expect Boston to fill that.
A lot of guys still left out there, but mainly as restricted free agents. Zach LaVine, Clint Capella, Marcus Smart, obviously. Who are some of the biggest names, or what would be the biggest surprise to you now that we've seen pretty much all the big names sign their deals?
I would be shocked if Houston did not match on Clint Capella. I think he gives them a whole new look. He's the perfect center for them. He's the ideal center in the NBA right now in terms of just athletic ability, mobility, versatility, and being able to run with the Rockets. If you were to choose a team that you thought would make a run at DeMarcus Cousins for no other reason than to just keep him out of the Warriors rotation, it would have been Houston. They obviously did not do that. I think that they need Clint Capella. The interesting one is Zach LaVine. I'm not so certain that the Bulls are willing to match. Let's see what Zach LaVine commands. The market is also somewhat dry. There's not a ton of cap space around. Teams don't have a lot of room to offer some of these restricted guys. So what I ultimately think is going to happen is some of these restricted free agents, Jabari Parker, Marcus Smart, they may wind up on smaller, shorter deals than they were anticipating. We already saw Zach LaVine laughed on Twitter when someone suggested that he would be a $15 million a year guy. He laughed at that notion, which is just, crazy for us to try to consider. But, evidently he feels he's worth a lot more than $15 million a year.
Michael Singer, USA Today NBA writer. You can catch him on Twitter at @MSinger. Mike, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Michael Singer, USA Today. Back to wrap things up just a little bit. You're on Press Row, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
How's it going, everybody? This is Keith.
And Katie, hosts of Coffee with Keith and Katie, here on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. When you're done here, I hope you'll check out our show, Coffee with Keith and Katie,
where we talk about our lives and relationships over a cup of coffee.
A new episode airs on Facebook Live every Monday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Coffee with Keith and Katie.
Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Listen to every episode and get the latest shows sent right to you. Subscribe to Press Row on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com. Or visit us online at www.thephmedia.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
Welcome back on Press Row, everybody. Christian Heimall here with you, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network. As always, you can get in touch with the show if you want on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at PressRowPHM. Find us on Facebook, Press Row by Public House Media. You can email the show, PressRowPHM@gmail.com. As always, you can find me on Twitter as well, at Chris Heimall. Answer some of your listener questions as we always do here. And, of course, get in touch with us on social media throughout. This one coming from Eric in New Orleans. George Carl said that DeMarcus Cousins has negative energy and that the Warriors will eventually regret signing him. What do you think? Listen, DeMarcus Cousins is an incredibly talented player. It's insane to think that he's never been to the playoffs, even with the injury last year. I know the Pelicans made it, but as you heard Michael Singer say, he's still never actually made it in his entire career. It's very interesting to me that the Pelicans somehow played better without DeMarcus Cousins last year. That says something. I don't know. He's a very incredibly talented, double-digit guy, 5 assists a game, very talented player, but there's something about his teams that for whatever reason just doesn't seem to work out, whether it be Sacramento, whether it be in New Orleans. And that locker room in Golden State, that might be where you really watch, is to see the drama. I mean, Michael Singer said that, to kind of watch the drama. But I don't know DeMarcus Cousins. I don't know many people around him. The people that I've talked to who know him, who know people around him, have said that he is ready to kind of turn a corner and ready to actually be that championship caliber player. So we'll see what happens this year. But you know that if he doesn't work out, if that character, if his personality does not mesh in that locker room, he won't be there that long. So I wouldn't be too concerned. George Karl is a very stand-up guy, but he's also had some pretty unfortunate issues with regards to some of his players speaking out against him. So it's a little unfortunate. Let's see here. Rick in Virginia, the Washington Nationals yesterday were swept by the Boston Red Sox. Had a players-only meeting after the game. What can the Nationals do to turn things around? Well, let's see here. They've lost 17 of the last 22. They're below 500. They haven't been below 500 this late in the year since 2015. And they've had some small issues here and there. Adam Eaton, an error on a sacrifice fly, a wild pitch. It's very unfortunate to see a team this talented. I don't know how much these closed-door meetings actually hurt, or actually help, but it's one of those things where every now and again you need somebody to step up and actually do something, and actually put the team on the back and just kind of just say, hey, let's go, and see exactly what happens here. Trey Turner said afterwards, let's get this thing going. We all know we're capable of playing better baseball. It's time to do it. It's do or die now. And he's right, because the Braves aren't going away. The Mets, you would think, could get better. The Phillies might go away a little bit here, but Atlanta's not going anywhere. And this team, if they can't figure it out, they're going to be in a lot of trouble, because they've got way too much money invested to be this bad. So I don't know if they need to go out and make a trade for a veteran, a clubhouse guy. They've got clubhouse guys. I just think what it really takes is maybe it takes a change in attitude more than anything else, and we'll see who in that locker room is going to be the one to provide that. I wonder, you would look to Bryce Harper, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's a Max Scherzer guy who steps in and does that. It's an Adam Eaton guy who's been around the block a couple of times. So Ryan Zimmerman, for instance, who's been there forever. So that would not surprise me. It needs to be somebody on the actual team in the clubhouse shaking things up and just doing something maybe a little bit different. But first-year manager as well, there's a lot of things that could contribute to a poor play. But the Nationals just have to figure it out, and I don't know how they do it. I think the easiest way to do it is to have one of their veterans step up and say, all right, guys, let's get it done and actually prove it. That's the biggest part. It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to actually go out there and do it. So we'll see exactly what happens. But I'd love to see the Nationals be good, because they're spending too much money to be this bad as they are. Last one here. Joseph in New York, Joey Chestnut, his 11th Nations title, 74 hot dogs yesterday. Do you consider him an athlete? Maybe not an athlete, but listen, I don't consider competitive eating, to me, I guess you could consider it a sport if you want to. There is competition involved. There is training that is involved. There's a prize to go after. But this is it's one of my favorite things to do during the 4th of July. It's a lot of fun. It's very goofy to me. I would never even attempt it. I would never even come close to trying it. But it is still a lot of fun to see how this stuff goes through and to see how many people actually flock to Coney Island for this. So I'll stick with my, couple of hot dogs and a few extra beers on the 4th of July instead. But good for Joey Chestnut, 11 straight. I think one of the funniest things ever was a couple of years ago when him and, was it Kobayashi or whatever the guy's name was, he was banned from the event and still showed up, and it turned into WWE. It was one of the funniest things I have ever seen in my life. But every now and again, you got to do that to be able to get some publicity for the sport. So really appreciate your guys' questions as always. Don't forget to get in touch with the show. Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. You can find us on Facebook, Press Row by Public House Media. Email the show, pressrowphm@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter as well at Chris Heimall, ChrisHeimal. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, share us with your friends. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, TuneIn Radio, as well as, of course, thephmedia.com. You can also get yourself some awesome show gear there as well. Big thank you to Michael Singer of the USA Today for joining us on the show and breaking down what has been a weird week in NBA free agency. And don't forget, folks, this is great for basketball. It's great. Whether you agree with me or not, you're still going to end up watching this year. So enjoy it all. We'll see you guys next week. Have a safe and happy 4th of July weekend. I'm Christian Heimall. We'll see you on Press Row.